Hey, Bluecoats, how we doing today? So I'm excited to watch rehearsal today. I'm excited to watch ensemble. And I brought a legend with me to hang out, not just at lunch, but to hang out with us today and tonight at ensemble and even stop by in the morning. He wants to be around the Bluecoats. So just like last week, we have a couple videos and then we'll bring our guest up. But first, I thought one of the coolest ways to introduce our legend would be through a really cool 2-minute video that the Percussive Art Society put together when he was inducted into, he's in every single Hall of Fame ever created. So this is from the PAS Hall of Fame, and then we'll talk a little bit more. I'm going to be emotional this one. This man means so much to me. But I got to show you one more video before we bring him up here, and it's just a quick one. I get asked often, as I'm sure John and a lot of folks do, what's your favorite drum corps show of all time? Now, not what's the best drum corps show, what's your favorite drum corps show of all time? Well, for me, it's always been the 1987 Santa Clara Vanguard. Now, I say that with all respect to John Vanderkoff, who was in the 1987 Garfield Cadets, and Ralph will be the first to tell you, if there was ever a year that there was a dynamic top two, it was 1987. So you saw the little montage, but I want you to meet his music, and I want you to listen. I want you to listen. I want you to put this in the context of this is 1987. The pit is a really new concept at this point, like grounding the percussion, which he was a part of that. So that's where they are at. And the musicianship of this, the expressiveness, and just the flat out fire in their bellies that they played with. That's when I knew I had to be around this guy, and I kind of have been around him my entire adult life. But this tune right here is the one that sucked me in. Can we show it? My soul. My soul. You know, I think you're smart enough to know that you here at Bluecoats, your team of instructors, and we have living legends that are with you every minute of the day. John, Jim. I mean, they're here every day. Douglas. The reason they're all in this room right now is because today's legend has had such a profound impact on us. Carol, why is the guard designers here? Because every single one of us has had our lives profoundly changed by our guest. And I want to bring him up here, and I want you to give a Bluecoats welcome to my big brother, Ralph Hardimon. Come on up. Welcome to the Bluecoats bubble, my friend.
This is cool.
Yeah.
I like this bubble.
Yeah. Does that bring you right back there that was a long time ago. When you watched that, I'm still crying from it.
I liked it.
Yeah. Yeah. Was that one of your favorites as well? It was my favorite. Does that one rank up there with you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does. That's one of many. I spent a lot of years over there, so I have quite a few to pick from.
Well, I'm going to do just a very quick timeline and get us up to some stuff. I'll do some questions and we'll get you guys in. Okay? Is that cool? I want to make sure they're caught up to speed. I am an expert on this man's life. I am. So Ralph was born in Oklahoma. 9 kids in the family. At a real young age, they moved to LA, and that's where he was raised. And so that's in the 50s and the 60s. I want you to put everything we talk about in a kind of a historical context. I think it's important that you do that. Because as a teenager, he's growing up in the city of LA in the 60s when things are getting how they're getting. And what I always find is so fascinating is your first real introduction to pageantry was watching a parade where the Los Angeles police band, a youth band, junior police band, came down the street, and what were they playing? And that was like your kid light bulb that made you. What was their parade tune?
Dragnet. Yeah, are you guys familiar with that? Probably
it's a 1950s dum da dum dum da 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 da.
It was a police television program.
Yeah.
Cops, you know. But yeah, it was Dragnet, and they had this killer music. So, anyways, the police band was playing.
You start there.
Yeah.
You get performance experience in the Velvet Nights. You get performance experience as a paid musician at Disney in Anaheim. Yeah, and then you march, and you were in the snare line of the very first DCI champion, the Anaheim Kingsmen, in 1972. All right. Who was, for the drummers out there, who was that other tall drink of water standing next to you in the snare line?
He joined the same night as I did. He was from the Diplomats Drumming Bugle Corps. I came from the Velvet Knights. We're talking about Tom Float. I know you. Yeah. A lot of you drum guys know him, but yeah, we go way back. When I went over to Santa Clara to teach, started in 1975. He started, I think, he wound up in the Blue Devils for years over there, but before that he was with Spirit, and before that he was with Etobicoke Crusaders, who I wrote for and who he taught. But all of those drum lines that he taught kicked everybody's booty from a competition standpoint, you know, so he had a lot to say, and we learned quite a lot from each other.
I know you have questions. Give me my couple. This is my thing. Remember, this is all about me. No. Ralph, to so many students, Fred Sanford, the name Fred Sanford is a trophy. It's a name on a trophy. And they're young. They don't know that. But to you, Fred Sanford was the person that was your original, in many ways, mentor, collaborator, turned the reins over to you. And I always say if there was a Mount Rushmore, Fred would be the first face on there, but Ralph would be the next one on there. Give just a couple sentences to give them a sense of Fred and Ralph, and just that dynamic and what he meant to you. I know that's like so hard to put in, but they see him as a name. Tell us about the man.
Well, first of all, Fred was doing Santa Clara Vanguard back in the day in the 70s when I was in the Kingsmen, Anaheim Kingsmen, which were from Southern California. Of course, Santa Clara was Northern California, but we competed against each other all the time, and we were going at it. Completely different styles, but 1974, I had aged out in 1973, so in 1974 I was in Northern California for the state competition. And of course Fred was there, and that's where I met him. A friend of mine, I don't know if you guys remember, but Ludwig used to have these drums that were made out of plastic, like they were orange and blue and this and that. Well, I was talking to some guys about that, Vistalite or something, yeah, it was about that, and how I thought they sucked, and Fred was working for Ludwig at the time, and a friend of mine said he was gonna tell Fred. I said, I don't care, go ahead and tell Fred. So all of a sudden I feel this tap on my shoulder, and it's Fred Sanford and this guy that told on me. And Fred goes, oh, I heard that you think these drums suck. And I went, they do. So he invited me over to his house, and we stayed up all night listening to Copeland and Aaron Copeland and an assortment of great music, and we were inseparable. From then on, we did Santa Clara Vanguard together for years. He left in '76, and that's when I came in, when I officially started, because he went over to the Madison Scouts and did them for a while. He actually took my gig. I was supposed to, so he took my gig, and so I took his, But he came back in '77, and we worked together from '77 through, I don't know, a long time. '79? Yeah. 80? Yes, 80. And then, I took over the program again from '81 through 90 or something like that, and then consulted for another 6 years.
Yep.
But yeah, Fred was my guy to the end. We were inseparable. We lived together. We were fine wine and dining guys. That's where I learned that from Fred. He was the master of fine wines. And now I'm the master.
Trust me.
So
he grilled for us last night. Woo!
So yeah, he was my best friend, and we shared music. He turned me onto a lot of music that I didn't know about, and I turned him onto a lot, and we were just like this. That's Fred.
Yep.
Fred Sanford. Now his name's, he's the high drum trophy guy right now.
Yep.
Thanks to Ralph Hardimon.
What do you guys got? I want to give you a shot. If somebody want to jump in with a question, I can keep going. What you got?
What inspired you to make the super well-known sticks that pretty much every middle schooler starts off with?
And so they're asking me to repeat the questions for the system since they're not mic'd. So the question is, and Ralph you were, if not one of you, were probably the first signature stick. I remember that. I remember when that, and you saw one of the ads. So I think they're asking kind of how that collaboration, inspiration, you and Vic, how'd that come about?
Well, Vic First called me up. He says, hello, I'd like to speak to Ralph Hardimon. And I went, who is this? And he said, this is Vic Firth. And I went, yes, who is it? Because
I thought it was Fred.
Yeah, me and all my homeboys back then used to, talk smack and try to act like we're somebody else. So all of a sudden he goes, your name sounds like Ralph Hardon Man. And I was like, and then I remembered some people, about 5 people telling me that that's the way Vic is. And I went, God, this is Vic. And he goes, yeah, it's Vic Firth. I said, well, what can I do for you, sir? And he goes, well, I'd like to do for you to do a signature drumstick. And I was like, he said, what do you think of that? And I went, yes. And, that's how it started. I mean, I wound up like, I think there's maybe 9 or 10 or 11 different sticks now that I have with Vic, but they came real famous and they polished them up and made them look good, but they sounded great and they feel pretty good. They got a nice rebound. Everybody liked them. It was kind of a thing. So, you know, I made $1 zillion off of it. I still make yeah, you know, when it first started out, you know, I was getting checks for $50, $60 like that a month. And I was like, cool, free money. Then all of a sudden there was a check for $2,200. This is a month. And I'm like, oh, nah. I'm gonna call up Vic Firth and you know, the office, and this has gotta be, this is not real. So I call him up and I'm going, you know, I want you to check this check out because it's an awful lot of money and blah, 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 blah. And they went away and came back and went, it's real. And I was like, Papa needs a new pair of shoes. So yeah, I started getting some biggies, you know, and you know, so I started making money off of it, just hanging out, which I thought was really cool. So if any of you guys get an opportunity, you snare drummers for starters up front here, if you get an opportunity, you know, good luck. Anyways.
Yeah, and that was kind of the original, and it's obviously a very different market, but anybody who was around in the late 80s, we remember that in our band rooms, whether it's high school or college, and the instrumentalist, the Vic First Stick, and it was. And what's cool is the crossover to that usually when we have a legend on, or, you know, well, Tom Blair, these have both been exceptions. You know, Tom's known in the real world. Well, so is Ralph. Go to any guitar center, go to any place that sells drumsticks in the world, and those drumsticks are gonna be in there. And so he breaks that barrier. I got one more question. Let me ask you guys, who are my music majors out there? Just who are of any kind of music? Okay, that's a lot. So some of you guys at some point, I'm sure there's people who wanna be Jim, people who wanna be John, people who wanna be, you know, whatever. They want a skill. People who wanna be Ralph. And we were talking about this on the ride up. And it's this idea of, you know, everybody now can get on Finale or Sibelius or whatever, or Pieware, and you can video games start to learn this craft. But I listen to that, and it's partly because I've seen the notebooks, and I think that they should live in the DCI Hall of Fame. There should be an archive. But to see just music stave notebooks and knowing that that thing we heard, he had to write that all out, not hear what it sounded like with virtual drumline, you know, invented by one of his former students. And the conversation I just had, we had to do that. John had to do that. You had to, like, you couldn't see it animated until kids were doing it. And that was where you made your name. And I'm gonna ask you a very pointed question, because you arranged Copeland, you arranged Bernstein, you were known for your orchestral arrangements. How did you do that as a percussion arranger? How did you approach that knowing you couldn't hear it back? You had to, because we talked about score study and where your mind went.
Well.
Yeah, I mean, basically what he told me is you had to try to become the composer if he was writing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would kind of put myself in the composer's shoes and say, if I was Sibelius or Beethoven or any composer you could think of, if I was him, what would I do if I was commissioned to write for drum corps? I'd say, well, first of all, we got to have 10 snares instead of one. Yeah. You know, but basically that's what it was. I mean, you know, there was a lot of adoption, but I really, truly wanted to become the composer as close as I could be, so I could at least contribute something to the music that's already been there. You know, so we had quads and this and that and blah, 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 and snares. But, you know, these famous people that we're all mimicking all the time, they didn't have all that stuff. I think about the composers, all the time I think about this. A candle, a quill, and a little thing with some ink, and this big old piece of paper, you know, that these guys had. And they're like, oh, whammo. I mean, just the stuff. Can you imagine? I mean, a full one page.
There was no virtual Mozart.
One page has got like full violin sections, first, seconds, thirds, cellos, violas. You know, can you imagine one bar? How many parts it was going on? I mean, these guys were like, so that's what I tried to do because I couldn't even be close, even get close to being one of those guys. So, I mean, I had to take.
I think the lesson there that I want you to take away, and John goes through this process too, like, and Doug, they all still have an element of old school. And what I mean is John has all the technology in the world, but when you see him, he has a table with the old things we used to write drill with in like the 70s and 80s. And Ralph has all the technology in the world, but he still has a pencil and an eraser and music paper. And remember that, like, don't just technology music to death. It can come from a really cool place, but you got to do your homework. And that's what he was saying in the car. You got to study the score where you're listening to Tchaik 4. Yeah. And he's like, man, I studied that score. He never had to conduct it, but he studied it like a conductor. One of you guys, give me a question. What you got?
What do you up to nowadays?
Writing. That's where I spend most of my time. Although during the COVID times, there was a time where I couldn't do anything, which was most of the time because I was by myself, and I was pretty bummed out. So I was just telling Dean last night, a trip like this is the second time I traveled in about 2 years because I had some surgery and stuff. And that's what I do. I travel and hang out. I like going to, elementary school, high schools, colleges, it doesn't matter. A room full of, doctorates or, masters sometimes. I do master classes over in Europe. But.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. I would imagine for you guys to hear that, like, well, I don't need to go, how many of you felt isolated and depressed during the pandemic? I think it's a given. But for me, when I hear people like him say that, it actually validates my feelings. Like, it's okay. I wasn't nuts for going nuts during this entire thing. Did you guys know that in 1988, the Bluecoats actually brought Ralph in to get him involved with them? How many of you knew that? A couple of you knew that? Yeah, they were doing some Latin music, and they hired him to come in and do master classes to teach them different styles, write some licks for the show. So he was with Vanguard, but he would come in and help with the troopers, he's always been that kind of person. We got time for one or two more questions. What do you got? Max, go ahead.
Who are your biggest musical inspirations?
My biggest musical
inspirations.
The first one that comes to my mind is Zawinul. Anybody know that name? Yeah, he was the keyboard player from Weather Report. And he was one. My three oldest sisters, who were violin, viola, and cello players, were major inspirations for me, and that's where I kind of learned everything. I will tell you this, and I told a lot of people this, that the first thing that I did when I saw those instruments at the house when I was a child is they looked like perfect bow and arrows, because you had the bow that you could shoot off of those strings, all right? And I'm going, but I can't try this because we were from a poor family, but I tried it anyways and got busted. But I had a good time in the process. But those guys were the ones, they could play. They were like in professional orchestras.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback. When he says his sisters, you could look up on iTunes right now. There was an 80s band that was on the charts called Climax. K-L-Y-M-A-X-X.
Yeah.
And they, like, in the movie Running Scared, they had a tune. Like, he has a gold record hanging on his wall from producing a chart on a band that two of his sisters were in. So, like, these are people that were rolling with Michael Jackson and Stevie Wonder and stuff, like, in the day. So if I said, like, my brother's a great guy, but, my brother plays bassman and his guitar. His sisters were real.
I'll tell you one thing real quick. I was very, very fortunate to be exposed to some fabulous people at a young age when I was growing up. I was just lucky. Like I said, started out with my sisters, but, I was in the business of, got in the business of writing commercials. for TV. You know, I played one timpani note and made thousands of dollars years ago when I was going off of one timpani note, and I thought everybody did that. I had no idea that how lucky that I was, you know, until later on. Oh man, are you doing this? So it was all very fortunate in the people that I met, because I didn't study music really until years later, many years later. You know, everything else was kind of, it just came to me naturally, and as everybody in my family, a lot of things came natural as well in terms of music. So I was very fortunate. There was a time when I did have to throw down and study to continue on to be a good percussionist.
Yeah.
Because of not just rudimental drumming, because I was playing me some snare drums, let me tell you, Jack. You know what I'm saying? Okay. But then there was drum set and keyboards. Every keyboard there's timpani, there's jazz, there's classical, and I had the chance, and still do on occasion, to play a little bit of everything. And when you get that chance and somebody invites you in, you better have your act together, because you won't get another shot of it, you know.
Yep.
It's like, don't accept a gig unless you know what you're doing. And make sure you do know what you guys are doing, okay? Practice makes perfect. You'll never be perfect, so keep practicing.
And as you guys head back to practice, that's a perfect setup. And Ralph's going to be around, and I want you to get to know him the best you can. I don't just mean now, over time. Get to know this guy, because I'm so proud of the work we're doing on so many fronts here at Bluecoats. I'm so proud of the work we're doing from a diversity and inclusion standpoint. I'm so proud of all of it. But here's the bottom line. Before there was any of that, 50 years ago, this man was showing us the way. And he was walking the walk in an activity that we know what that activity, you can see pictures, you got eyes. And Ralph is the reason that I think so many people, I have met so many people in my life that say, I'm involved with this because I needed to see somebody that looked like me. And I don't mean me. You know what I mean? I have so many dear friends that Ralph, and he won't talk about it. He won't give himself the credit for that. But what this man did to push this activity forward, not through his words, but through his music, through his joy, and through his actions, I think has just had a profound impact that the activity is just starting now to kind of get hip to and to catch up to. But from where we need to be as an activity, just follow Ralph. It's worked for me since I was 23 years old. Just follow Ralph. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been awesome. Will you please give a thank you to my dear friend, Ralph Hardimon.